Do this right now. Sit back. Place 2 fingers lightly over your pulse. Count 4 quiet beats. Now imagine the tiny pause between them. That pause is where the bottom blood pressure number lives. Do you feel how calm it seems? And if your chart says fine while that number keeps falling, notice that gap. It did not begin like an emergency. It crept in quietly. You sat under bright clinic lights, watched the cuff tighten, and heard, "Your pressure looks controlled." Then you went home, took the same pills, skipped the salt, walked the neighborhood, and trusted the sentence. But at breakfast, before coffee, the home monitor kept whispering another story. 126/58, 131/55, 129/52. The top number got attention. The bottom number waited, while the appointment felt completely finished. Here is what I need you to hear. A falling diastolic number after 60 is not random. It is not simply your age catching up with you, and it is not always solved by celebrating a lower reading. Your body does not lose pressure between heartbeats for no reason. Sometimes the safest looking number is the one that should start a smarter conversation. And the most surprising part is this. The real signal may not be in the pressure peak at all. You may feel reassured by the top number, but the warning can sit in the rest beat, the widening gap, and the blood flow your brain and heart depend on between beats. In my work with older adults, I have seen this blood pressure pattern misunderstood over and over again. Elaine, 74, from Tampa, did everything right. She logged readings and brought them to appointments. Her systolic looked improved. Her diastolic kept sliding below 60. The problem was simpler. No one read the pattern. Today, I want to help you read that pattern. And we have science behind this. In the New England Journal of Medicine, Kaiser Permanente Northern California researchers analyzed more than 1.3 million adults and over 36 million blood pressure readings across 8 years. They found that both systolic and diastolic hypertension independently contributed to cardiovascular outcomes, including stroke. In simple terms, the top number leads the conversation, but the bottom number still carries vascular information that deserves attention. In this video, you will get 5 values. What the bottom number means after 60, why a wide pressure gap matters, how to build a 2-week home log, which symptoms change the urgency, and what to ask your doctor. But I am not going to reveal the most important connection yet, because mistake 5 looks responsible. Mistake 3 feels harmless, and mistake 1 changes the whole reading. My name is Dr. Thomas Bennett. At Senior Health Daily, my promise is simple. Calm doctor-led guidance, plain language, real research, and practical steps older adults can discuss with their own doctor. Before we go any further, drop a comment below and tell me this. When is your bottom number lowest? Before morning medication, after walking, or at bedtime? Because that timing tells me whether the pattern is tied to medication effect, artery stiffness, hydration, or measurement technique. That clue changes the first question I would ask. Write morning, walking, or bedtime in the comments, and write the bottom number if you feel comfortable. I read every single one. Now, one important point before we begin. Diastolic pressure itself is not your enemy. It is part of your body's resting circulation, the pressure that remains while the heart relaxes. The problem begins when stiff arteries act like a hard hose. Medication pushes pressure too low, or repeated low readings come with dizziness, weakness, falls, speech trouble, face droop, or sudden numbness. That is not normal aging to ignore. So listen, because the first cause is the one many people miss, especially after our previous video, How High is Too High for Blood Pressure After 60? Viewers asked for the next layer. This is that layer. Do not change medication on your own. Bring the pattern, because the bottom number may be where the warning quietly shows up. Now let me show you why the bottom number can look harmless on paper while it quietly changes the way blood reaches the brain. The top number is the pressure when your heart squeezes. The bottom number is the pressure that remains when your heart relaxes between beats. That resting beat is not empty time. It is the moment when the heart muscle receives much of its own blood supply. And it is also the moment when small vessels in the brain depend on steady pressure, smooth flow, and arteries that still have enough spring to soften the force of each heartbeat. After 60, that spring changes. The aorta and the large arteries often become stiffer. They stop acting like a soft rubber hose and start acting more like a hard pipe. When that happens, the top number often rises because each heartbeat hits a less flexible wall. At the same time, the bottom number often drifts lower because the artery no longer holds pressure as well between beats. So a reading like 150 over 60 is not just one high number and one low number. It is a pressure gap of 90. That gap matters. A composite patient I will call Carolyn, 72, from Des Moines, thought her home monitor was giving mixed messages. Her top number looked better after treatment, but her bottom number kept slipping into the high 50s, and she felt lightheaded when she stood near the kitchen sink. The wrong belief was, lower is always healthier. The pattern was different. Her body was asking for an individualized review, not panic, and not self-treatment. Before we go deeper, tell me your age and the city where you are watching from. Are you watching as a senior, a spouse, or a son or daughter caring for a parent? I am truly glad when you are healthy and happy every day, and this community becomes stronger when older adults know they are not learning alone. Number 1. Your top number can look controlled, while the bottom number tells a different story. The mistake is celebrating only the first number. I understand why it happens. Doctors often focus on systolic pressure because it is a powerful predictor of stroke, heart failure, kidney damage, and vascular injury. But the bottom number still carries information, especially when it repeatedly falls near or below 60 in an older adult with symptoms: stiff arteries, diabetes, kidney disease, coronary artery disease, or multiple blood pressure medicines. Here is the mechanism. If the artery is stiff, the heart squeezes against a harder system, so systolic pressure climbs. Then, during the resting beat, that stiff artery fails to recoil and maintain a steady cushion. The top number and bottom number separate. The chart can look better because the top number dropped from 160 to 128. But if the bottom number also moved from 74 to 54, the real question becomes, is this lower resting pressure comfortable for this body? The New England Journal of Medicine published a Kaiser Permanente Northern California analysis led by Alexander Flint and colleagues that examined 1.3 million adults, more than 36 million blood pressure readings, and 8 years of cardiovascular outcomes. The researchers found that systolic and diastolic hypertension both independently predicted heart attack and stroke outcomes, although systolic pressure generally carried the stronger effect. That matters. It tells us not to erase the bottom number. A second clue comes from older adult pulse pressure research. In a JAMA internal medicine study of 9,431 elderly people, the group with systolic pressure at or above 160 and diastolic pressure below 70 had a 90% higher death rate than the low-risk reference group. A third data point comes from the Framingham-related work reported by Narat and colleagues. Every 10 millimeters of mercury higher pulse pressure was linked with a 31% increase in fatal and non-fatal cardiovascular events over a median follow-up of 7.2 years. Plain English. The bottom number is not the villain. The pattern is the message. Ask yourself honestly, has your diastolic number fallen into the 50s repeatedly? Do you feel dizzy after medication, after standing, after breakfast, or during a walk? Have you started avoiding stairs because your body feels unsteady, even when your top number looks controlled? A composite patient I will call Leonard, 78, from Phoenix, believed his new numbers proved he was finally safe. Then his daughter noticed he sat down after every shower and gripped the counter before walking. His small, safe change was not stopping medication. It was bringing a 2-week pattern to his physician and asking whether the timing, dose, or combination needed review. The emotional result was simple. He stopped feeling blamed by his own numbers. Do not change the medicine, change the conversation. Number 2, the danger is not always the number. Sometimes it is the gap. Pulse pressure is simple math. Top number minus bottom number. If your reading is 148 over 62, the gap is 86. If your reading is 130 over 78, the gap is 52. The second reading is not automatically perfect, and the first is not automatically a diagnosis, but a consistently wide gap after 60 deserves attention because it often reflects stiff, large arteries, stronger pressure waves, and less cushioning between the heart and brain. Think of a flexible garden hose. When water surges through, the hose expands a little and then releases that stored energy smoothly. Now think of a metal pipe. The force hits harder, the peak rises, and the resting pressure falls away faster. Older arteries often behave closer to that second picture. This is why many seniors see the top number rise while the bottom number stays low or drops. The stroke connection comes from flow and vessel stress. High systolic pressure injures the inner lining of arteries, pushes strain into small brain vessels, and increases the risk of clot-related and bleeding strokes. A low diastolic number, especially when paired with a very high top number, signals a wider gap and a body that is not smoothing pressure well. That pattern does not guarantee stroke. It does deserve a serious review. The Inner Stroke Case Control Study, involving 26,919 participants from 32 countries, found hypertension was the largest modifiable stroke risk factor, with a population attributable risk of 47.9%. That is not a small role. Another international analysis of pulse pressure in 5 populations and 6,470 participants found that home pulse pressure added cardiovascular risk information beyond ordinary readings, especially in older adults. And the American Stroke Association teaches that a transient ischemic attack is a warning stroke, not a harmless spell, even when symptoms disappear within minutes. So when a senior says, "My hand went numb, but it came back," I listen closely. When someone says, "I dropped the coffee cup, but I was fine 5 minutes later," I do not call that drama. I call that an emergency warning until proven otherwise. A composite patient I will call Russell, 76, from Cleveland, had readings around 152/60. He thought the low bottom number balanced out the high top number. One morning his words came out slurred while he was speaking to his wife, then cleared before the ambulance arrived. The wrong belief was that disappearing symptoms meant disappearing danger. The pattern was wide pulse pressure plus a brief neurological warning. The small safe change was immediate emergency evaluation, then a structured blood pressure review later with his care team. If this bottom number lesson is making sense, type the one-word flow below. Your health is your precious capital, and flow is exactly what your brain and heart are trying to protect between beats. Number 3. A rising bottom number can warn you before one single reading looks frightening. Some seniors focus only on a low diastolic number. But another pattern matters too. The bottom number that keeps climbing over months. One office visit might show 128/78 and everyone relaxes. But the home log shows the bottom number was 68 last year, 72 3 months ago, 76 last month, and 84 this week. The danger was not one number, it was the direction. Here is what rising diastolic pressure often means. Smaller arteries and arterioles are staying tighter. The heart is pushing blood into a system with more vascular resistance. In a younger adult, a climbing bottom number often speaks loudly. In an older adult, systolic pressure often dominates risk. But a rising diastolic trend still tells the doctor that the vascular system is changing, medication effect is changing, sleep, weight, kidney function, pain, alcohol, salt intake, or stress physiology is changing. The Kaiser Permanente and NEJM analysis gives the first evidence anchor because it showed diastolic hypertension was not meaningless across a massive real-world dataset. The second anchor is the American College of Cardiology and American Heart Association guideline framework, which classifies diastolic pressure from 80 to 89 as part of stage 1 hypertension when paired with the full risk picture. The third anchor is the European Society of Hypertension context. European guidance uses different diagnostic thresholds and older adult treatment targets, but still emphasizes accurate measurement, cardiovascular risk, and out-of-office readings rather than one rushed number. That difference between guidelines is not confusion. It is a lesson. Targets are not magic slogans. They are clinical decisions. Ask yourself honestly, is your bottom number slowly moving upward even when you feel fine? Did the change begin after worse sleep, new pain, weight gain, extra alcohol, a different anti-inflammatory pain medicine, or a missed walking routine? Does your doctor see only office readings while your home readings show the real slope? A composite patient I will call Beatrice, 68, from Sacramento, had neat clinic numbers and no symptoms. She believed one normal office reading meant the whole month was normal. Her granddaughter helped her record morning and evening readings for 14 days, and the pattern showed diastolic pressure sitting in the mid-80s most mornings. The small safe change was not fear. It was asking for a proper treatment review before the top number became the emergency. If this is valuable, subscribe and tap like so this senior health community can keep growing. Every like helps another older adult receive useful medical information. And I am grateful when you share your experience because your comment helps this community learn with dignity. Number 4. Your cuff may not be wrong. Your method may be wrong. This is where many careful seniors get trapped. They buy a monitor. They measure daily. They write down numbers. But the setup turns the cuff into a liar. A bad posture changes the reading. A cuff over clothing changes the reading. A wrist cuff held below the heart changes the reading. Talking while the cuff inflates changes the reading. Coffee, exercise, nicotine, pain, stress, a full bladder, and crossed legs change the reading. And when the method is inconsistent, the doctor receives noise instead of a pattern. The American Heart Association recommends resting quietly for at least 5 minutes, sitting with back supported, feet flat, legs uncrossed, arms supported at heart level, and cuff on bare skin. The AHA also advises taking 2 readings 1 minute apart and recording the results. Validate BP, supported by the American Medical Association, lists devices that have been validated for clinical accuracy and emphasizes clinically validated upper arm monitors for self-measured blood pressure. A Johns Hopkins medicine study published in JAMA Internal Medicine tested 133 adults and found that an arm hanging at the side overestimated systolic pressure by about 6.5 millimeters and diastolic pressure by about 4.4 millimeters compared with an arm supported at heart level. That is enough to distort a trend. So here is the practical protocol. Use a validated automatic upper arm monitor when possible. Use the correct cuff size. Sit quietly. Empty your bladder. Keep both feet on the floor. Put the cuff on bare skin. Support the arm so the middle of the cuff is at heart level. Do not talk. Do not watch dramatic news during the reading. Take 2 readings, 1 minute apart, at the same time each morning for 2 weeks unless your clinician has given you a different plan. Then write down everything: systolic, diastolic, pulse, time, symptoms, medication timing, coffee timing, dizziness, poor sleep, pain, stress, a fall, a skipped meal, a new pill. A composite patient I will call Naveen, 71, from Edison, New Jersey, was convinced his monitor was broken because morning readings bounced wildly. The pattern discovered was not a broken machine. He measured once with his arm dangling from the recliner, once after coffee, and once while talking to his son. His small, safe change was a quiet chair, a supported arm, and 2 readings 1 minute apart. The emotional result was relief because his doctor finally had usable data. If you are still with me, write the number 1 in the comments because this is the one protocol that turns worry into evidence. If you do not like writing numbers, write 0, and I will still know you are here learning with us. Number 5. Lower is not always better after 60, but higher is not safer either. This is the part that requires maturity. Some people hear low bottom number and become afraid of treatment. Others hear high blood pressure causes stroke and believe pressure must be pushed down at any cost. Both reactions are too simple. For many people, lowering high blood pressure saves lives. The SPRINT trial, funded by the National Institutes of Health, enrolled 9,361 adults aged 50 or older with systolic pressure at least 130 and increased cardiovascular risk. Intensive treatment targeting systolic pressure below 120 reduced cardiovascular events by 25% and overall death by 27% compared with the standard target below 140. In the SPRINT subgroup of community-dwelling adults aged 75 or older, intensive systolic treatment also reduced major cardiovascular outcomes and death, showing that older age alone is not a reason to ignore high pressure, but treatment still must fit the patient. SPRINT excluded certain groups, including people with diabetes and prior stroke, and intensive treatment was done with close monitoring. Research on the diastolic J-curve, especially in people with coronary artery disease or stiff arteries, shows the concern that when pressure is pushed too low in vulnerable bodies, benefit can flatten and symptoms or perfusion concerns can appear. A Korean cohort analysis of more than 1 million adults, published by Kim and colleagues, found a J-shaped relationship between diastolic pressure and vascular mortality, meaning very high and very low levels both carried signals in the population. Plain English: blood pressure treatment is not a contest to chase the lowest number. It is a plan to reduce stroke risk while preserving steady blood flow, balance, kidney function, and daily life. This is why the right question is not, should my blood pressure be low? The right question is, given my age, stroke history, thanks in advance history, kidney function, diabetes status, coronary disease, falls, symptoms, and medications. What range are we targeting for me? A composite patient I will call Helen, 81, from Louisville, had 3 blood pressure medicines and a beautiful-looking top number, but she felt weak after the morning dose and nearly fell near the mailbox. Her wrong belief was that complaining meant she was failing treatment. The pattern discovered was timing-related dizziness with low diastolic readings. Her safe action was a pharmacist and physician review. The emotional result was confidence, because her care team adjusted the conversation without her making dangerous changes alone. After you finish this section, leave a longer comment with your own blood pressure story if you feel comfortable. Tell us your age range, what pattern you noticed, and what question you plan to bring to your doctor. I truly respect your story, and your experience can help many older adults feel less alone. Now let us stack the pattern, because one simple explanation often fails. A low bottom number after 60 is rarely just one thing. It can be artery stiffness plus a strong medication effect. It can be dehydration plus a diuretic. It can be poor sleep plus morning pressure surge. It can be diabetes affecting blood vessels plus kidney disease, changing fluid balance. It can be pain raising pressure at night, then medication lowering it too much by morning. It can be a cuff problem pretending to be a medical problem. And it can be an office snapshot missing the movie of your real day. This is why I do not want you staring at one isolated number. One reading is a photograph, a 2-week log is a film. A composite patient I will call Teresa, 73, from San Antonio, had 3 separate explanations offered by different family members. Her son blamed salt. Her sister blamed age. Teresa blamed the cuff. The 7-day pattern showed something more useful. High systolic pressure before bed, a wide pulse pressure in the morning, and dizziness 2 hours after medication. Her small safe change was creating a clean log with symptoms and timing, then taking the cuff to her appointment. The emotional result was not perfection. It was finally being believed because the pattern was visible. Caregivers, listen carefully here. If your parent says, "I just feel off," do not dismiss it because the clinic number looked fine last month. Ask when it happens. Morning? After pills? After standing? After walking? At bedtime? After poor sleep? When you connect timing with numbers, you give the doctor something useful. For the next 7 days, track 4 things: the 2 blood pressure numbers, the pulse, the timing of medication, and symptoms. Then add the gap. Top number minus bottom number. Do not diagnose yourself from that gap. Just bring it. A wide pulse pressure after 60 is a reason for a real conversation, especially when the bottom number is low, the top number is high, or symptoms are present. Now the doctor questions. Question 1. Given my age and medical history, what diastolic range are we targeting for me? Question 2. Is my pulse pressure concerning? Question 3. Are any of my medicines pushing my bottom number too low or dropping pressure too fast after a dose? Question 4. Do my home readings suggest white coat hypertension, masked hypertension, or an overnight pattern that clinic readings miss? Question 5. Should we consider a 24-hour ambulatory blood pressure monitor? The United States Preventive Services Task Force states that an initial positive office screening can be confirmed by home-based blood pressure measurement or ambulatory blood pressure monitoring. European guidance also emphasizes out-of-office blood pressure because clinic readings miss white coat and mask patterns. The American Heart Association home protocol gives the daily method. These are not fancy extras, they are how better data enters the room. If this stacking idea helps, share this video with one senior, spouse, neighbor, or adult child who needs to understand both numbers. Also, turn on notifications because this channel continues bringing practical medical guidance for older adults who want to live longer with independence and clarity. Now the safety line. A stroke warning is not a home experiment. If you or someone near you has sudden face drooping, arm weakness, speech trouble, sudden confusion, sudden severe dizziness, sudden loss of balance, sudden vision loss, sudden numbness on one side, or the worst headache of life, seek emergency help immediately. Do not sit down and watch it. Do not check 3 more blood pressure readings first. Do not wait because the symptom disappeared. The American Stroke Association says to call emergency services immediately for BEFAST stroke warning signs. Now for the action plan. Tonight, do not change your medicine. Put your blood pressure pills in the same place. Write down the names, doses, and timing, and place your monitor on a table where your arm can be supported. If your cuff is old, too tight, too loose, or a wrist cuff you cannot hold at heart level, write that down too. Tomorrow morning, measure correctly before rushing. Empty your bladder. Sit quietly for 5 minutes. Keep your back supported, feet flat, legs uncrossed, and cuff on bare skin. Take 2 readings 1 minute apart. Write both numbers, pulse, time, symptoms, and medication timing. This week, calculate pulse pressure for each reading. Do not obsess. Observe. If the gap is consistently wide, if the bottom number repeatedly sits near or below 60, if the bottom number is steadily climbing, or if symptoms appear after medication or standing, mark those rows. For 2 weeks, build the log. Morning is often enough for many people, but if your doctor asked for evening readings, follow that plan. If symptoms happen at night, early morning, after walking, or after a dose change, record the timing clearly. Then schedule a doctor or pharmacist review. Bring the monitor, bring the log, bring the medication list. If writing is hard because of arthritis, ask a trusted family member to make the table or use a notebook with large lines. Clear records protect you better than memory, especially when appointments are rushed and symptoms come and go during ordinary busy mornings. Ask the 5 questions. Ask whether a 24-hour ambulatory monitor is appropriate if the pattern is confusing, symptoms are present, or clinic readings do not match home life. Long-term, build one steady habit. Measure less emotionally and more correctly. One key trigger to test is timing. Notice whether the low bottom number appears before medication, 2 hours after medication, after standing, after poor sleep, after dehydration, or at bedtime. Timing is often the clue that changes the visit. Before we move to the ending, make sure you are subscribed and write one question you want a doctor to explain more deeply. I promise I read the comments with respect. This senior health community is grateful when you share your experience and your deeper questions because those questions guide future doctor-led lessons. One myth must be corrected. Do not try to fix a low bottom number with salt water, extra coffee, skipping pills, cutting tablets, or taking medication only when you feel high. Those shortcuts create danger. Blood pressure medicines have timing, duration, kidney effects, and interaction patterns. If your numbers worry you, the safest home remedy is not a remedy at all. It is a clean log, correct technique, and a respectful review with your clinician. So here is the lesson. The bottom number is not more important in every person. The top number remains a major stroke signal, and high systolic pressure after 60 deserves serious treatment. But the bottom number is not decoration. After 60, it helps reveal resting pressure, artery stiffness, medication effect, pulse pressure, and whether your body is tolerating the plan. Remember the 3 patterns. First, the bottom number repeatedly falling near or below 60, especially with dizziness, weakness, chest discomfort, confusion, fatigue, falls, or unsteadiness. Second, a wide gap between the top and bottom numbers, especially when the top number is high. Third, a bottom number that steadily climbs over weeks or months, even before one office reading looks alarming. This is not just aging. This is physiology, and physiology can be understood. Your weekly plan is simple. Use a validated upper arm cuff. Measure correctly. Write both numbers. Calculate the gap. Record symptoms and timing. Bring numbers, not worry. Then ask your own physician what target fits your specific body, because the same number can mean different things in different seniors. Never stop, skip, split, or move blood pressure medication on your own. That sentence matters. This video is education. It is not a personal diagnosis, and it is not a replacement for medical care. Your doctor knows your kidney function, stroke history, heart disease, diabetes status, medication list, and fall risk. You bring the pattern. Your clinician helps interpret it. Before you go, tell me what topic you want next. Nighttime blood pressure dips, morning pressure surges, dizziness after blood pressure pills, or how to choose the right home monitor. Your topic request helps me build the next lesson around the real questions seniors are facing. And make sure you are subscribed because I have a related video coming soon on the morning blood pressure surge and why many strokes happen in the early hours. That next video connects directly to what we discussed today, and you need to receive that guidance as soon as it is released. The number is small. The life it protects is not. The goal is not to become obsessed with a machine. The goal is to keep walking the dog, cooking breakfast, holding your coffee cup, speaking clearly to your family, and living independently without waiting for a crisis to teach you what the pattern already showed. Talk to your own physician about your specific situation. Bring both numbers. Bring the gap. Bring the symptoms. Bring the medication timing. And remember Elaine from the beginning. Her chart looked controlled, but her pattern was not being read. That is the difference I want for you. Not fear, preparedness. Not guessing. Evidence. Not panic. A better conversation before the emergency. Begin the 2-week log today with your doctor's guidance, and let the pattern speak more clearly than fear.